A couple of hours ago, all of us found out that Joan Rivers had passed away.
I know.
Very sadly.
I
I bring it up because I must be acknowledged, first of all, and second, I know that you had a personal connection with Joan Rivers.
I had gotten to be friends with Joan, whom I adored. I actually got to see Joan open for Johnny Carson when I was a kid in Vegas.
In Las Vegas, she was the opening act.
Yeah, I mean, my parents took me. I wasn't like a 4-year-old who was like, let's go to Vegas. We were there and met her there, and I got to be friends with her again, a couple of years ago.
And what was the nature of your connection just the last couple of years? Because she went to you for advice, isn't that true?
Yes. She was curious. I would get a call from her every once in a while. I'd get a message like, Chris, it's Joan. Listen, I'm on the phone. It's Joan. I want to know about the internet. She wanted to know about the internet, which is one of the reasons why I think she was so relevant for 6 decades, is that she wanted to know how everything worked and how people were communicating now, and she wanted to understand digital content, and I adored her, and she was lovely and a pioneer, but also never stopped working, and just such an inspiration, and I've been heartbroken about it all day.
I wanted to, obviously, people of all different ages have their own sort of snapshot of someone like Joan Rivers. For me, and I don't know what it's like for you, Andy, but for me, when I was a kid and I would watch Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson would occasionally take some time off, and he'd have a substitute fill in. And Joan Rivers would fill in for Johnny Carson. And when she did, it was an event. Everybody in the country would talk about it the next day. It's hard to, the media is so fractured now. There's so many thousands of different shows and everybody competing for attention. It's hard to explain to people today what an event that was. She would go on, she would guest host for Johnny Carson, and people would gather in the living room, and then everyone would howl with laughter, and the next day they would talk about it, because at that time, she was so outrageous, and her comedy, it felt so out of the bounds, and people were just blown away.
Yeah, I mean, she never lost her edge. She was an edgy comic. I mean, I've been doing this comedy tour with people like Bill Burr and Louis C.K. and Sarah Silverman, and everyone just always talks oh, but Joan is she hated the word legend because she always oh, it makes me sound old, but she really was she did so many things and broke down so many barriers and did it up until right before she passed away. So it's a tragic.
That's the other thing too, is so many people talk about women in comedy and the progress and the fact that more and more hilarious women are knocking down barriers left and right, or are there barriers anymore? But when she was being funny on The Tonight Show, you'd sit there, and the entire family, no matter what age you were, you weren't thinking this is a woman being funny. She was just hilarious. Her gender was completely irrelevant.
Yes, and the things that you're saying, I also agree with. But just as a comedian, no gender lines at all. She was just one of the best performer, comedian, stand-up writers. And if you guys ever get a chance, you should watch her documentary called A Piece of Work, which it gives you just a little bit of insight into how her brain worked, but also such a lovely woman, so sweet, so generous, and so, it kind of ended on a sad note, but she deserves respect and a huge round of applause for Joan Rivers. Whom I missed already. I adore her.